So how did this kid who was interested in science, seen here drinking some concoction of dry ice, wind up being a performer in a string quartet? I'm Charlton Lee. I'm the founder and violist for the Del Sol String Quartet. We're a touring ensemble based out of San Francisco. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about living a creative and curious life. The motto is keep paddling. When we are young, as kids, we don't even get a paddle. So if we're using the river of life analogy, our parents have the oars at the beginning, right? And then the school. And then as you get older, finally you want to have your own little raft and start moving down. For me, it all began in the mountains of northern New Mexico in the town of Los Alamos. My parents were scientists. My dad a theoretical physicist, my mom a chemist, working at the lab there. And this was the view from my backyard. As you can imagine, my worldview was a little different from maybe many of yours out here. It was wide open, perhaps a little hostile, and clearly very beautiful. That's the Rio Grande. You can just see it as it sneaks out, a little corner of it. And that was my first literal experience paddling down a river, floating down that river in an inner tube. So when I became an undergraduate, I was just sort of floating along this same path that my family had set me on. I was studying math and physics over at Cal. And then when I finished up, finally I felt something was not quite right. I got a little bit of cold feet, and I paddled to the side of the river out of the main stream. I began working in a high-energy physics group. I put off grad school. In fact, I had already applied and been accepted, and then turned it down. Took the time off to work and think a little bit about it. During this time, I even managed to get myself onto some important papers. This is an extract from Physical Review letters. And working with all these scientists, it was a lot of fun, but I was still not quite where I felt like I needed to be. And in terms of the river of life, I was now in an eddy, just kind of circling around. I went to Europe for 3 months just to explore, try to find myself. And while I was there, I met some professional musicians. This is a shot of, I'm the one on the right there, in the streets of Italy. Met these musicians, and I began to become curious what a life in the arts might be like. At this point, I began to paddle backwards, back upstream to a fork in the river that I had missed. So paddling in this case can be risky business. This other fork was wild, full of brambles, alligators, whitewater. I went back to music school. 1992, I started the Del Sol Quartet. This is 4 of us preparing for our very, very first concert. We chose the name Del Sol because first it was a bit irreverent in the classical world, classical music world. It wasn't named after some famous composer. It wasn't named after a town or a state or a country. Del Sol, from the sun. We wanted to be for everybody living under the sun. Here we are, ready to take over the world. So this career has been an incredible ride, and as I say here, you may find yourself in strange and wonderful places. I've been to most states in the country, as well as many countries around the world, playing music, meeting other musicians, composers, and certainly audience members from all walks of life. When somebody comes up to you after a concert and says, "I could hear my ancestors singing to me while you were playing that music," well, you know your job has been done well when that happens. Here's one of those wonderful places. This is actually a dance club in San Francisco, the DNA Lounge. DJ with string quartet. And this is the Library of Congress. This is backstage. And here the librarians have actually brought out some manuscripts of music that we had been working on. And here's the science geek part of me still at work. We're exploring what had happened between what the composer had wrote and then what the publishers did. And sometimes there are discrepancies, and that's always kind of exciting to find. The other amazing part of being at the Library of Congress is that they have this wonderful collection of Stradivarius instruments. And during the day, they're on display behind a glass case. And when they take them out, it's like the first time they brought them out, it was under armed guard. But they let us play on them, and we actually got to perform on these instruments. So we were on stage with hundreds of millions of dollars of instruments, which is kind of scary and very exciting. Expect the unexpected. You just never know what's going to happen. It's like, again, it's like using my paddling analogy. It's like if you go to the side and you look over here and then paddle to the other side, it's like if you're not just sitting in the middle of the river, it's like you're going to discover all kinds of fun things. And here's a real paddling music experience. We were down the Green River in Utah for 8 days playing string quartets and rafting the entire time. So it was here we had found an acoustic location where the rocks were reflecting nicely and everybody could get a nice concert, including some of the wildlife. On the right there, you see that I'm sitting in a two-person raft. And the problem of having two people with oars is you better be paddling in the same direction, otherwise the currents will take you into very strange places. And so it matters a lot who you have along for the ride. For me in the quartet, of course, there's the four of us, but beyond the four of us, there's the extended family. We have our board for our nonprofit, which supports the quartet. Also, of course, everybody's significant others. Now, there are children involved as well. So what happens when people want to paddle in different directions? It's really important to hold the reins. So I have, you notice that I'm the one behind the steering wheel still. And everybody else comes along.
Oh, turn it on. Okay. Is your brother here too? Oh, no pressure.
There are phantoms.
The unexpected.
Unexpected, definitely. Okay. So, but finally, going back to my science roots, what if is still the main question that I'm asking. It started with me in the sciences, it continues now in music, and it really affects every aspect of my life, including, let's say, cooking and martial arts. It's like, what happens if I combine traditional Chinese food with New Mexican cuisine? It's actually really good. What happens if you take a string quartet and choreograph them on stage with dancers? Now, what happens if I apply my Tai Chi to my music making? All these kind of things really shape, the way that I create life. And it also drives what we look at in terms of our curiosity encourages performances of living composers, which means that they're going to be addressing issues that are with us today. So issues like gun violence, the plight of Afghan refugees interned in the Australian outback, remembering the victims of the Cambodian Holocaust during the Khmer Rouge times. So all these kind of things, unlike what many people associate with traditional classical music, it's not happening 100, 200, 300 years ago. It's happening now, within the last decades. This is a piece called Attention by Pamela Z, and it's a piece looking at the way that we engage with our devices. So in this piece, we've been playing along, all of a sudden 3 of us receive texts on our phones, which we take out, and they're being displayed. And then we all go over to the cello and begin playing the text music on the cello, all of us at the same time. So it's kind of a strange piece. Very powerful, actually. So there were people who were crying at the end of the piece. So this life in the Dulcimer Quartet, what does it mean? It's been 27 years of creative making, and that's collaborations with all kinds of musicians from various disciplines, work with film, dance, visual arts, video games, even wine. So creating new techniques, new systems, and especially bringing the voice of living composers to life. We've premiered and commissioned hundreds of new pieces. So commissioning means it's like we're actually raising funds to pay composers so that they can write their music instead of having to, wait tables. And this is, we think this is incredibly important work, because if we don't do this, if these pieces don't get out there, then the people in the future won't know what was happening at this time, right? The music of today brings up issues that we all face and contemplate, and this is also important. I think highlighting some of these issues in a way, in an artistic way, gives people time and space to think about them. And finally, being in the quartet has been a vehicle for my own exploration. Like from my early science days, this just like insatiable curiosity has always been driving my approach. But thanks to composer Ben Johnston, I've been recently exploring a more complex and yet more accurate way of looking at harmony, which is taking using math to describe, to create a more expressive nuance in pitch. Okay, that sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but what the audience gets is a really cool sounding music. And then finally, one of the programs that was mentioned in the introduction, the Angel Island Project, that has been a dream of mine for many years, and we finally got some funding from the Hewlett Foundation to bring this project on.
Many of these people were kept here for weeks, months, and in their frustration and sadness, they carved these poems into the walls. Our project is called the Angel Island Oratorio, and we are using as inspiration the poems carved in the walls of the detention center here by Chinese detainees during the Chinese Exclusion Act years.
Poems are very powerful. They're not just words, but in a way I could see how to feel it. And I feel a sense of heaviness in my heart, but also very thankful to be able to have a chance to create such a meaningful project.
So that's composer Huang Ruo, Chinese-American composer living out of New York. And we first met him working in the Santa Fe Opera, and he was premiering a piece called Dr. Sun Yat-sen, and the opera was completely sung in Chinese. And I was so impressed by his treatment of using that language in a musical context that I wanted to create something else with him. And this is finally going to come to fruition in 2020, in October of 2020. So if you're interested, I hope you can all join us there. The premiere will take place on Angel Island at the detention center itself. So it will be very exciting. Okay, finally, keep paddling, right? It's like, for many of you young people out there, your lives are just beginning. You're just getting on your own raft. Go for it. It might take you on a wild path. You may go down some unknown branch of the river, and just keep exploring. I'm going to leave you with one last video, and this one this is simply the trailer from the dance piece that you saw at the beginning, but it has music by composer Dong, and I hope you enjoy it.